and welcome back to another What the Falk Sunderland preview show as we try to keep up to date with an absolutely hectic championship schedule. Sunderland made it 10 games unbeaten, or 5 without a win, depending on how you look at it, with a frustrating, if largely dominant performance against West Brom during the week, but it was 0-0. It doesn't matter, and that's the most frustrating thing. But a completely different challenge awaits us on Friday as we head to Bramall Lane on a Friday for a crucial promotion clash against Sheffield United. I'm nervous, you're nervous, I reckon they might be a bit nervous as well. But how nervous are they? To find out, I've roped in a rare good guest in the shape of Blades fan Ollie from the Sheffield United way. Ollie, are you nervous?
Oh, mate, horrendously so. It's very much one of them where you look at the results and you look at what's been going on the last few weeks, but then I see your team news. I see some of the players getting fit, some of the players no longer suspended. And yeah, as we get closer, thinking our preview, I described it as probably our biggest game of the season so far. We played Wednesday about 2 weeks ago. So that shows how I'm feeling about this one. I am feeling it. I'm nervous.
To be fair, I've seen Sheffield Wednesday this season, and I hope that I don't lose my preview guess for the next game we play against them. But they're not very good, are they? Let's be honest.
Nah, they're crap. But, you know, we have a bit of an emotional feeling there. But yeah, they're rubbish.
Just a tad. It does feel like a particularly big game, like for us and for yous, because look, at the time of speaking, we might be fourth, hopefully not. Use a second. It could have been even better if it wasn't for the points deduction. But how is the fan base feeling about it? Because I know we viewed it for a while as like, okay, we need to be in a decent position by the time we reach that game, because on paper, it's probably our hardest. I imagine you don't view it as the hardest game you've got all season, but how do you view it?
No, so obviously I think you generally look at your away games as being your hardest games of the season. Obviously, we've already been to Ellen Road, which I think for most people, they will say that's going to be as hard as it gets. So I suppose from our perspective, we're thinking we might have already got that monkey off our backs. But this is one of those where it's a real test. You know, we've played a lot of games. We've got a fantastic record at Bramall Lane this season. We've not conceded since Michael Cooper joined the club at Bramall Lane, which is insane. Bear in mind, we signed him sort of second week in August. So we're on a completely ridiculous run of form at home. But this feels like the first proper challenge we're going to actually have at home. You know, we've played, I think the best team we've played at Bramall Lane is probably Wednesday. And, you know, we've just made jokes there about the fact that they're not actually that good. And so it's about time that we really tested ourselves against a proper side under the lights at Bramall Lane. It feels like it's set up for us, well, either to discover that maybe we're not quite as good as we thought, or to really reinforce that idea that actually, no, coming down, we are still the best team in this division, really, is what we're out to prove. And I think this is the first time we're really going to be able to test that at Bramall Lane.
It's interesting because the game itself, like from our perspective, is very similar. It's kind of a marker on where we're at. Are we really going to be around the automatic promotion places? Can we push for it, or is this going to be playoffs and let's hope that we can get in them and have a good run of form? But it's very different to the last time we played each other, because I remember last time we went to Bramall Lane, it was like, oh God, Sheffield United, we've just come up from League One. We went down to 10 men, you were like, oh God. And I remember afterwards, loads of Sheffield United fans saying, actually, you were one of the better teams we faced that season. Yeah. And that gave us like a lot of confidence at the time. Is there an anticipation that we're going to do the same thing as we did last time, kind of come at you? And I imagine most teams sit in.
Yeah, they do. And it's that sort of tactical battle that's going to be really interesting, because so many teams come to Bramall Lane and, like I say, they sit in and they come for a 0-0 effectively. And we have to score, we have to break it down. And then the game becomes a little bit easier for us, if anything, because once you're one up, you can pick them off then, and they've got no answer to it because it's already broke their sort of game plan. I think what we're expecting is that last time you came, obviously without the red card, I think you would have beaten us. I think with it, you still gave it a pretty good go, because that was one of those days where we all sat there and went, Jesus, we've got away with one here. That we're a bit lucky. And I think we're very much fearing that same kind of scenario where if you come, really go for it, you've got that youthful exuberance that really seems to shine through at the moment. You know, they're players that are playing with no fear, that won't come to Bramall Lane and sort of reverse into their shell. They're going to try and thrive on that big stage. They're really going to want to show off what they can do. And I think that's a recipe for a team who could really cause us a lot of problems, because it's almost as if we've got used to now the default of breaking a team down. We saw it last week. We went to Coventry and Coventry just came and played. And but for 2 absolutely fantastic goals we scored in the first half, they will feel they were very unlucky not to beat us last week. And I think I would agree that they were we're defensively strong, we're hard to break through, but they seem to be doing it and really causing us issues with the movement, with the pace of their attack. And I feel as though it could be a similar problem that we face when we come up against yourselves on Friday.
The weird thing is, if I went even further back, I remember my first visit to Sheffield United was the night of your disco lights. Max Power scored a 30-yarder and we beat you 1-0 in the League Cup. But let's not touch on that. That's a bad memory for everyone involved. As I touched on
I don't
before,
think anybody was having a good time back then. I don't
no,
think anybody was enjoying themselves.
no, we really weren't. As I touched on before, like we were drawn 0-0 against West Brom last night, but at the same time, you're looking at other teams' results. It's getting to that point, and it was like, 2-0
Yeah.
Sheffield United. Then it was 3-0, and look, it sounded comfortable. I haven't watched a minute of the highlights. How comfortable was it?
Unbelievably so. Most comfortable game we've played all season. We got ahead very early on. I don't know what, I think Oxford have got their difficulties. They're a newly promoted team. Last season, there were two divisions between us. And I think this time last season, they were in the bottom half of League One. It was a fantastic run at the end of the year that got them promoted. So there was a huge gulf between where we were and where they were. It really felt like it showed yesterday. They've struggled a little bit with injuries. So we have to give them that sort of benefit of the doubt. But it was so easy for us to play through them. I felt defensively, they were all at sea. Every time we got the ball, every time we went forward, Harmer, O'Hare, Raksake, and Campbell just caused them. That four, for the first time, I think, this season, really looked like they clicked. And every time the ball went into any one of them, they were finding the movement. They were having space in behind the defence. And we were just playing through them with ease. Around sort of the hour mark, we just took his team off, to be honest. We took it easy from that point onwards. We did have the opportunity for a little bit of rest, a little bit of changes. And so hopefully that means that we don't have too many fitness issues coming into the game on Friday. And we've been able to sort of preserve a little bit of energy because by the end we were streets ahead, really.
I think that makes it 5 wins in your last six. Obviously, the one caveat to that was the draw against Coventry, where you had 10 men, I think just after the half-time period or just before.
Just before.
Just before, wasn't it? That's right. How well do you feel you're playing at the moment? Because I feel like when we did well at the start and we went top, let's be honest, anyone can go top of the first few weeks of the season. We sustained it. But a lot of people are saying, Burnley, Leeds. Sheffield United were kind of that team that people didn't really mention that much, but it feels like you're the informed team at the moment.
Yeah, and it's a funny one because I feel as though the game against Oxford was our best complete performance of the season. All of our success so far has been built on defence. We've got, well, other than Burnley, the best defence in the league. Like I say, at Bramall Lane in particular, it's just impenetrable. Teams can't get through us. They're not able to break us down. And we've got such an organised back four that it's really, you can't even see how another team would score. It's not just that they're not scoring, so they're not having a chance in 90 minutes. It's just really easy, really simple, and we're keeping them at arm's length. So from that side of it, that's been really what we built all of this good form on. But since the last international break, so since Coventry, I know it's only a 2 games, so it's a really small sort of sample size, but these last 2 games have been so good going forward. When we've got the ball into the attacking third, it really feels like they've clicked. Jezrin Raksake looks a completely different man. He started the season clearly lacking fitness, really struggling to show his ability at championship level. But now he can beat his man. He can come inside. His finishing has been unreal in these last 2 games. Tyrese Campbell's got 5 goals in his last 6. He just looks to be the perfect penalty box striker for taking those chances. And we all know what Gus Harmer and Callum O'Hare can do when they're fit, when they're on it. Now, Callum O'Hare had a really bad run of form, but he got his first goal for the club last night against Oxford. And hopefully that's really going to kickstart him. And Gus Harmer, for me, I still think he's the best player in the division. I'm sure there'll be many people who argue. I'm sure you yourself have got a couple of names on the tip of your tongue you might want to argue for. But when he's on it, I think he's unplayable. And he's really been on it these last few games. And I think that's scary for any opposition.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it's a bad shout. I think he was excellent for Coventry the season before he went to Sheffield United. Last season was it was what it was. It's difficult to stay in the Premier League. It's seemingly quite easy to get there if you come down from it, but nonetheless. But you touched on Gustavo Hamer there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was he the one that had to get the little booster seat so he could do the interview the other week?
That was exactly the one who had to get the little booster seat. Yeah, stood next to 6'7" Harry Suter. That was a real mismatch for the Sky camera.
Bless him. We touched on that. I want to go into the players a little bit, but you touched on we touched on the one that you're on at the moment. I think as a Sunderland fan, I know what happens when you win a derby game, and I know what that can do to your form. It can catapult it in some ways. Sometimes it doesn't, all right, but sometimes it does. beating Chef Wed, how much has that lifted the mood within the fan base and added like that extra fuel to the let's go up and let's go up automatically?
Yeah, it's a really special thing, and I think so the way that I always analyze Sheffield derbies is that generally they're defining. There's always an era that you can look at in Sheffield football, and it's defined by a derby. So if we go back sort of 15 years, United had been the better team for a long time. United were second in League One, Wednesday were third. We got 10 points clear of them, and you said, right, well, United will get up. It was the derby we could afford to lose. They beat us. We then completely fell off. They got promoted ahead of us. They then were the better team for 5, 6 years. We then went to Hillsborough and beat them in the famous bouncing day game. And so I was really quite worried that, it's been a long time since we'd played. This could be another one of those defining era changing ones. But instead, it really does feel as though it's galvanized everybody at United because we felt we were doing well. We were feeling good about the season. But now there's this extra almost connection with the players, reconnection with the club, with the staff. It really felt as though we needed that galvanizing moment that said, forget last season, forget all of that pain. This is now, and this is good. And it really does seem to have had that effect on the fans. So hopefully everyone does seem to be coming out of it thinking, do you know what? Let's just go and get this done now. We've proved we're better than them. We've proved we have nothing to look over his shoulder about. Let's finish the job. And hopefully that really sets us up nicely for the rest of the season because, yeah, it'd be, well, if we can go and do it again at Hillsborough, that'd just be a nice cherry on the top. But let's get promoted first, then we'll worry about that after.
Funny you say about that, about when you win a derby and like you get the connection with the players. I think when you see the players understanding they'll never really fully be able to understand unless they're a fan of the club that the way we do. But I do think when you see them trying their very best to do what you really want to see happen, it does build that connection. And look, there's players in the past that I idolized. Like I'll always have time for Stephen Fletcher. There's a random one for you because he always had a good game against Newcastle. I'll always have time for him. I don't know if I whether I rate him that much outside of that, but one man who will 100% get that, and you've seen him singing songs in pubs and stuff like that. And I'll openly admit, I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. I like Chris Wilder. But when he came in, I thought, whatever you appointed him for, I felt it was, I don't want to say mental, but it felt just like it smacked of trying to recapture a glory that had been come and it had gone and you couldn't redo it. But now it's just kind of happening again a little bit. Could you talk me through why the marriage of, outside of the obvious, he's a Sheffield United fan, why does the marriage of Chris Wilder and Sheffield United work?
God knows, but it's like magic dust. I don't know how we found it twice. Because I was with you, I'll be honest, when he came back in last year, I was very anti it. I just didn't think it was going to work. I used the term we're the only team above League One that would have given him a job. And at the time, we were in the Premier League, still trying to stay up. It really felt as though, like you say, we were just throwing something against the wall in the hopes that it would stick. But it was hope. It wasn't expectation. It wasn't based on a plan. It was just hope. But it's just the connection that he's got with the fans. It's so hard to quantify. And you don't realise the effects that has until you see it in full flow. Because last year, we had completely dissociated from what was going on the pitch. It was terrible week after week. And you'll have been through times that are the same because teams that have been in the Premier League and they've come down go through this. It's part of that process. But losing sort of 4-0, 5-0, 8-0, 5-0, it's just no fun. Like there's no joy in football doing that. And yet, all the way through that, all the fans at Bramall Lane kept chanting Chris Wilder's name. They kept saying, this is the man we want. And the reason for that is that when he first came to the club, when we were in League One, we were at the lowest ebb that we've been at for 40 years. We were as bad as it could be. They just had a lap of dishonour where we booed every single player for an entire sort of end of season lap of appreciation. They just were getting booed, sworn at, everything under the sun. Some of the players who'd been subbed off in the last 5 minutes had been swearing at the fans on the way off and never came back out. It was just a really rotten core of a club. So to get somebody who was a fan and the way that he galvanised us really just forged this almost forever connection that's going to work. The story always goes that we'd started the season terribly. I think we lost our first 5 games with Wilder as manager. And they were on the way back from Millwall. And he said, right, lads, pull the team bus up. There's an off licence there. Here's 200 quid, Billy. Go in there, buy beers for everybody. we're all just going to get drunk and talk this out all the way back to Sheffield. And then we went on and got 100 points, won League One. And then within 3 years, we're in the Premier League. Like, it's just insane. But that is a story that resonates with so many people in the sort of fans of Sheffield. And so it's not just that he's a fan, it's that he seems to embody everything that we say. So if I sit there and I complain to my dad at half time, like, oh, this is what's going wrong, I'll then listen to his post match and he'll go, well, this is what was going wrong at half time. That's what I said. It's exactly the way that I saw it. He seems to get the game the way that all United fans do. And it's almost it's a parody, really. It's a parody of being Northern or being from Sheffield, where, he's one of us, he'll be all right. He gets it, doesn't he? He's one of us. But that does just seem to be the way that it's worked. It's the way that the fans have built that sort of connection with him. And because of the journey last time, and because of how it ended, I've talked about how it started, the amazing feeling that we'd come from nothing and he'd taken us on this journey. But it ended in COVID. Like the last time I watched a Chris Wilder team at Bramall Lane, we beat Norwich 1-0 and went 5th in the Premier League. The next time I watched a Chris Wilder team at Bramall Lane was last season, when he'd come back to the club after we'd been relegated, promoted again, had a terrible start again. Like, so much had happened, but we never got to experience that downgrade. We never got to experience the low of booing him off and wanting the manager sacked. We never got to chant boo and you're getting sacked in the morning, because we weren't there. It wasn't real football. And so we never had that moment that told us Chris Wilder's not good enough and he's not the manager of Sheffield United anymore. It was just we turned up one day and for some reason he wasn't there. And so it feels right to have him back. And now, whether it works and we go on again or whether it all goes wrong at some point, at least we'll get a proper conclusion to the story that we were on with Wilder last time. And I think all of the fans just want to have that again. And it seems like, Wilder's ready for it to be a good story again, which is just nice.
Funny that you mentioned that, because I remember, like, when games came back, but it was COVID, and it was at the back end of that season, and I remember being like, Sheffield United have come back crap. Yeah. And then you kind of went crapper. I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. And then you were back in the Championship and all that kind of stuff happened. And like you say, I've never really thought about it that way. I did laugh quite a lot when he called out the Coventry City players in his press conference the other week, saying if they'd run that hard, Mark Robbins would still be in a job. I was like, you know what, fair play. I think it's...
Yeah, he certainly... he has his friends, I think, in football, but he has obviously a lot of respect for so many of the other managers. And I think he does... I remember he's done similar all the time. He did it when we were in the Premier League quite often, because he obviously really likes Sean Dyche. And he always used to say, like, why is nobody talking about how good Burnley have been, by the way? While we're all sat here telling me how great Rafa Benitez is or something like that. And he'd always come back to those points. So I always like it when he gets a dig in. That means that he's committed to something.
I quite like him. I'm a fan. He had to deal with not too many outgoings this year. He had to deal with some big ones, though, that left. Like Austin Trusty. Look, I live up in Glasgow. I was lucky enough to interview him the other week, and he's doing a good job for Celtic. Was obviously a player there. Jayden Bogle went to a rival, direct promotion rival. Cameron Archer also left. Yeah, but he's managed to keep a lot of the core together. Like, the players that are big players for you, Gustavo Hima and stuff like that, and added a little bit of quality to it here and there. But which of the new signings that he's brought in have kind of impressed the most, and which players that have came down with you that maybe didn't have a good season last season have improved this season under him?
Yeah, I mean, we had quite a lot out of contract in the summer as well, which I think really helped, because it almost gave us a complete refresh where you could say, actually, anybody who'd clearly not been part of the culture was allowed to sort of move on and to sort of leave. I think in terms of the impressive players, it's the spine of the club that's just been fantastic so far this season. So I referenced him before, Michael Cooper. I still personally believe that Victor Johansson is the best goalkeeper in the Championship. I will die on this hill, but I have been reliably informed by lots of other people that I'm wrong, and it's Michael Cooper. He is fantastic. He's made some wonder saves. He's not been that busy, but whenever he's been called upon, he's always done a good job. He's always there, and he's so commanding of his box that he just comes and claims everything, which really releases the pressure. You've then got in front of him Harry Souttar, who for me is our best signing. I think he's just an outstanding footballer. He's an absolute man mountain at 6'7". Nobody beats him in the air. Nobody dominates him, and he just heads everything away. And that's something that we've not had for so long. You know, we're known for playing five at the back now. We played three centre halves. And the reason we played three centre halves is that we didn't have one dominant. So what you had is you had one who would try and head everything, but when they missed it, they got two who could cover, could drop in behind, could sort of help them out of that problem. With Harry Souttar, we don't have to do that. So now it's four at the back, and he's just the one who stops everything in its tracks. You've then got in front of him Vinny Souza. Now, I have never hated a man the way I hated Vinny Souza this time last year. Honestly, he was the one. I would have had him, if anybody had said to me that I could just pay a tenner and he'd never play for us again, I would have paid it. I just could not stand the man. I thought he didn't care. I thought he was arrogant. I thought all he ever wanted was to go back to Brazil and play for some fancy team that weren't called Sheffield anymore. And he'd not even realised what he'd come to. But this season is a different man. He's committed. He's giving everything in every game. He's riling up and sort of playing with the fans. He's committed. He's captained us a few times. The turnaround that he's had, I've never seen a player have a turnaround as quickly or as impressively as he's had. And he looks every bit the £10 million midfielder that we bought last summer. He looks dominant at this level and outstanding. And then up front, Tyrese Campbell, you know, he's got 5 goals in his last 6 games. I'm not saying that he's been a star player who dominates games but he's always there to finish. He's taking his chances. He really looks sharp. And I think that's something that we needed, because in the summer, you know, we lost Cameron Archer, we lost Ollie McBurney. We kept Ryan Brewster, but, you know, I don't think that's a success story. So we needed a goal scorer, and it looks like we've really found one in Campbell. So that entire spine of the club, that's what all of this is built on. And if you lose any one of those 4, that's when you'd start to see cracks appearing in this squad.
When you mentioned Ollie McBurney there, I forgot he's in Gran Canaria, summing it up with Scott McKenna.
Yeah, it's a bizarre. They're building a bizarre Great Britain team, aren't they? Just out there in Gran Canaria. I'm sure they'll all fit in fine.
They'll all get on. All good lads. I had one question where a listener asked me to ask this, and I've never asked this, and I'm pleased he did ask. But you're one of the few who'll come up against this year that's had I'll quote this, pleasure of dealing with VAR. So I was asked to ask this question for when we go up, is what he said.
Nice.
What was your experience of it? Do you prefer it with or without?
Oh, much prefer it without. Well, look, don't get me wrong. I believe that VAR is the right thing, but I just think it's used so badly that it ruins the entire experience. I think at the top level, if I'm Liverpool, then I probably want it, because it probably means that it probably earns me more points than I lose. Because you're saying that where there's a mistake, right on the line, it matters so much, but you can't overestimate the pain that it gives you when you're in that ground trying to just enjoy a moment. Now, it was one of the things that most upset me last season, because we were rubbish. As bad as you can be, I'm not offering any sort of challenge to that. We were awful. But the game that stuck out to me was we played Aston Villa at Bramall Lane. And after 20 minutes, I think we were 4-0 down. And so we'd been battered non-stop from first minute. We'd been battered. It was 5-0 in the end. In the 94th minute, we got a free kick on the left wing, crossed it in and headed it in to make it 5-1. Or it was the 95th minute, it would have been 5-1. And the ref spent 2 minutes checking whether a big toe was offside. He then ruled the goal out. And so at 5-0 down, I've stayed for 96 minutes when I've known we've been battered. And in the 96th minute, they thought it was so important that someone's toenail was offside that they had to call it off. And that's what I mean when I say it kills the experience. It's not even just in the fantastic moments that it can ruin you. It can even ruin you at your absolute lowest ebb, because even then there's no joy in it. They just find another way to take a goal away from you. And so, yeah, I think I can see why it's there, but it ruins the experience in the ground. And the joy of just celebrating a goal is something that I have taken for granted for way too long. And I always describe Championship, and this is arrogant. I will open myself up immediately. I know how arrogant the next sentence that comes out of my mouth is. But I have referred to the Championship as catharsis, because you go up, you get battered every week. You have to deal with VAR and no joy and no fun. And waiting 5 minutes to know if you've scored or not. To come down to the Championship, it's nice to just put ball it back at net and go, get in. Like, we scored one last night that was possibly an inch offside. Like, I've watched it back. I can't tell, but he might be an inch offside. But in the moment, it didn't matter. Like, I didn't have to go, oh, we might have been an inch offside. Don't get too excited yet. Oh, get out of the corner. What are you doing? Wait. Have you not seen ref? He's got his fingers in his ears. None of it matters, and it does. It's a good...
It's not.
I can't... It's hard to find. That's the thing, is that it's so bad. I think for competitive balance and for the competitiveness, it's probably a good thing in that it makes sure you get the fair decision. However, it should. Yeah, I'm not saying it does, but that's the theory. But as a spectator, as a fan, there's nothing that I've experienced that's worse than VAR for just enjoying a game of football. And I say that as somebody who's watched me team lose 8-0. Like, I'd rather watch us lose 8-0 every week with the other team just celebrating than watch us lose 8-0, but have to wait 2 minutes after every goal just to confirm it we're going.
We scored last night against West Brom. And I think there's debate. I don't think he was offside. I think it's like there's literally a toe in it again. But you know what? I'm not sitting here thinking over and over it. The ref made the decision and that's it.
Yeah.
And
you can move on. Like, you can just go, you know what? I can't tell. If I can't tell, you can't tell. Let's not get a ruler out and like try and recreate it to see if we can find the angle. Let's just say, I don't know. Stick with what the ref said. I don't need all the rest of it because, it's just demoralising and it breaks you because the biggest... So obviously I said it was annoying when we lost 5-1. Well, we lost 5-0. But the FA Cup quarter-final, we had it at Bramall Lane. We played against Blackburn. We beat them 3-2, scored a screamer in the 90th minute. But just a minute before the ball at the back of the net, their lad had gone down on the halfway line in a challenge with one of our players. And genuinely, you jumped up to celebrate the goal, and then everyone went, why is he still down? 1 second, what's this ref going to do? And so you've sort of got 30 seconds, and then you've got a minute of going, and then you've got, it is. And it would just... It takes those moments away from you, and they're why we go and watch football. They're the bits that are special. So we need to try and just keep it special.
Put it in the bin. Room 101, bring that back. I'm going to pose maybe a difficult question before we chat about Sunderland. Apparently, I don't do enough Sunderland chat in the preview show. Sorry about that. You're currently owned by Abdullah bin Mossad Al Saud of Saudi Arabia. Look,
yep.
In Sunderland,
339th in line for the throne. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, he's quite far down. We know there's a bit of noise around Saudi ownership at the minute, and people will see this as a Sunderland podcast and they'll put one and two together. But whatever, make your own mind up on it. But what's your own personal feelings on it? Because I know that a lot of my feelings when it came around to being owned not just by Saudi Arabia, by something that would be morally or ethically not quite where it should be. I don't know how to put it as politically correct. Wouldn't be for me because I find Sunderland a big community club, and I know Sheffield United are exactly the same from what I know of you. How does it feel as a fan having that kind of ownership? And I know it's a little different to some other Saudi ownerships, but...
Yeah, it's a little bit different to some of the Saudi ownership in the fact that he's skin. I think that's the biggest issue that we've got, to be honest. No, it's a good question, and it's a really interesting one. So if we talk about it on the whole, I think it's wrong. I think it's one of those scenarios where using sport or football as a way of cleansing the horrendous things that these regimes do is something that we should not allow. And particularly when you see things like the government being involved in making sure those deals can go ahead despite other concerns, that poses an even wider problem of, wait a minute, this is football. This isn't politics. This isn't us giving other people an opportunity. This is about the communities around which football teams are built. And therefore, we just spoke about VAR, and it's about the fans in the stadium enjoying the moment of scoring a goal. That's what all of this should be tailored towards. And it should never be about, well, actually, 1 second, just before we do, don't forget to visit Saudi Arabia or visit Qatar or visit the Emirates. We don't need any of these presentations. Just let us watch a game of football that's connected to our community. So I think there's a much wider point that, if I'm honest, I'm not massively qualified to speak on about the ownership situation there when it's by a state. Obviously, where United are is a slightly separate situation. mainly, as I've said before, and I said it as a joke, but it's also kind of true, is because he's skin, and that he's not bought Sheffield United to represent Saudi Arabia. He bought Sheffield United as a private owner of a football club, originally at a 50% stake, working with a Sheffield businessman, Kevin McCabe. He then bought out Kevin McCabe as the sole owner of Sheffield United.
Is that the worst Saudi Arabian owner ever? He's Saudi Arabian
yeah.
and he's skint.
I mean, it's just skin. Look, I think the difficulty for me is that he's been fine. Like, as an owner for Sheffield United, he's probably been good. He's overseen, and this is depressing, but he's overseen the most success Sheffield United have had in my life. Like, while he's been the owner, it's the most successful we've ever been. And that's a really depressing statement. And so he's done a really sort of balanced job. But within that time, we've had a points deduction for not paying other clubs the transfer fees that we promised them, despite the fact that we've had either parachute payments or Premier League TV money for every season that he's been the sole owner. So I don't know what's happening to the money there that we then couldn't afford to pay. I think it was £3 million for Enel Ahmedhodzic last time we were in the Championship. So there's a question mark about some of what's going on behind the scenes at United. We've been rumoured to be going through a takeover for a long time. Originally, we were going to be bought by an African billionaire called Dozie and Bose. He's currently being investigated for fraud by the American government. After that, we were going to be bought by, I think it's the guy who was originally going to buy Newcastle, was called Henry Morris. He's currently in prison for fraud after being arrested by the American government. And we were told in the summer that we got a deal agreed that was with the EFL for another conglomerate of American owners to buy us. Like I say, I was told that that'd take about a month on the 1st of July. I've not seen anything yet. So in terms of our ownership situation, it does feel like it's a mess at the moment. I think we need something to change because we need more money. We need somebody to come in who's actually got something to offer the club. And I say that as somebody who, we've had the prince, as, he's referred to because he is a prince in Saudi Arabia. We've had him on our channel. We've interviewed him. He's a nice man. I genuinely believe he cares about Sheffield United, and he is a kind, nice person to meet. But the problem that he's got is that he's not got enough money. He doesn't ever, or that I can remember, has never tried to influence or put any Saudi-related branding around the club, which I think if you're going to have an owner, at least they're not going to try and do that.
That means I'll be heading on to the next question.
Wow.
Damn. We've fallen to third at the time of speaking, potentially fourth, 2 points behind yourselves, regardless of what happens with Leeds tonight. At a risk of making you sound arrogant again, which I don't think you will, where do you place Sunderland in your list of rivals when it comes to promotion?
So I'll be on it. I'm not going to become popular with the answer to this question. I will be open and frank about that immediately. I'm not about to make myself a popular man to the fans of Sunderland, and I apologise to everybody for what's coming out of my mouth. So I think Leeds are the best team in the league. I think they're miles away the best team in the league. I think by the end of the season, they will walk it. And this is where I'm going to be unpopular. I think the second best team in the league is probably Middlesbrough. I see them as, I see them as a very big threat in terms of a team who are going to take the automatic promotion spots. I would then say that we are the next most likely. I would then put Sunderland as the team fourth and then Burnley fifth. So it's not that I see us as being significantly better than Sunderland. I think the way that those young players have developed, I think the way that that team has come together, particularly since the summer, has been really impressive, especially when you think about the concerns that we had about goal scorers. For example, it always felt as though, well, Sunderland are a decent team, but who's going to score the goals? And now it feels as though you've addressed that a little bit. You've got Isidore and you've got obviously others chipping in and being able to contribute there. So it feels like you've really addressed all of those key problems. So I definitely see you as a major contender, but I don't think you're the biggest because I think Leeds and Middlesbrough are the two who have me most worried about who's going to take those spots.
I think it's a fair assessment. Boris doing all right at the minute. Flash in the pan. 2 questions before I let you go because I still haven't paid for the premium and I won't. One player you would take from Sunderland side to fit into Sheffield United's team and why, and a score prediction.
One player, I mean, where United are our weakest is we've got two positions that I really think we need to recruit for. We need a left winger and we need a centre forward. They're the main issues that I think we've got in the squad. But with Tyrese Campbell being on fantastic form, I'll probably take Romain Mundle. You know, he started the season fantastically. I'm going to go 1-1 for this one. I think it's actually I think it's a really good game. I think it'll be a really entertaining watch for everybody at home. I think for us, we've had some fitness issues. We've had some availability issues. And so 3 games in a week feels like a lot, especially doing Saturday, Tuesday, Friday. That just feels like it's asking a lot of the legs that we've currently got in the squad. So I think we might take the lead, but then we'll think, oh, look at that. We've got a fantastic home record and we never concede goals. And then you'll hit us with a sucker punch sort of last 10, 15 minutes. And then it'll be sort of hanging on a little bit with you looking more likely to take the win in those sort of final moments. But I think a 1-1, and I think both teams would be pretty happy with that, if I'm being honest. I think that's a good result all round. I know it probably is frustrating for you to then go to 6 draws in a row, but looking at them individually, I think that'd be a good result all round.